and welcome to Central Florida Salute on YouTube. I'm Bob Peters, your host. With me, I have the honor of having an Air Force full bird colonel retired, John Casper, who has quite the story. Yep. I met him through the Band of Brothers. He's also with the Distinguished Flying Cross. And when you hear his story, you'll know why he's with the Distinguished Flying Cross. Mm-hmm. John, it's great to see you, buddy.
Good to be here.
You know, I'm glad you made it.
Yep.
But tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally?
Originally, I was actually born in Washington, D.C. in Walter Reed Hospital. So I always claim I have no state of record, but I do have the birth certificate.
Yeah.
And but I was raised primarily in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and went to Catholic grade school, an all-male high school. And at 18, then I left home and went off to St. Louis University, where I was in ROTC, because my driving goal from when I was like 5 years old was to be an Air Force pilot.
Really?
That's what I wanted to do. My parents told me that. I'd run around with airplanes in my hand, and so that's what I set my heart on. I went through college in 3 years. It was set up that way. There was three semesters a year instead of the normal 2. And got commissioned in 1964 and was selected for pilot training. So I went to Vance Air Force Base in Oklahoma for pilot training, and fortunately, I did pretty good. In fact, I did real good, because I got to pick the airplane I wanted to go to after pilot training. So that was either the number 1 or number 2 guy. I got to do that.
Was you say you were in Washington, D.C. Was your father in the service or something, or are you a military brat?
My dad was in the Army for World War II.
Oh.
And so he was based in D.C., and then after that, though, he went out and he landed in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
So he had combat in the Pacific.
So you were a military brat?
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of. Good.
I mean, he ran an F.W. Woolworth dime store forever. I could tell you that much.
So, what was the plane you wanted to fly? You said you got your choice.
Yeah, I wanted to fly the F-105. And so I selected it and was assigned to it. And after survival school, I ended up in Las Vegas. And a 6-month course to get checked out in an airplane, 120 hours. And upon graduation, immediately to Vietnam. Actually to Thailand, to fly combat in Laos and North Vietnam.
You Udorn?
No, I was at Karat.
Karat. Okay, well, I was down at Utapao.
I know where it is.
We didn't have fighters. We had bombers and tankers.
Yep.
But, yeah, so it's a single pilot plane, right? Single.
Primarily, they did have 2-seaters, but primarily single seat. And then, of course, about the time I got there, the Wild Weasels, the surface-to-air guys who went after the missile sites, were arriving with 2-seat F-105s. So all the airplanes were 2-seaters.
So how many flights do you think you did in the military? Because you had quite the career after the military. We'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm. Well, I ended up with 5,000 hours. So I'm not sure how many flights that'd be. Most of them were short. Most of them were like an hour and a half or so. But a lot of the combat missions were about 3 hours, because we'd air refuel going in and coming home for the most part.
Oh, you had to air refuel?
Yep, almost every mission.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know they did that with the bombers, but I didn't know they did it with the fighters. Well, that makes sense, though, you know. And so what was your primary function? Were you to take out something or to go after certain things? Your missions, what kind of missions did you have?
We were really bomb droppers for the most part. So we'd be assigned a target, and then we'd go out with maybe 4 airplanes, or 8, sometimes 12 to 16, in flights of 4, and try to destroy whatever target we were on. In fact, one of my missions, I ended up dropping a span of a railroad bridge outside of Hanoi.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we'll go into that mission later, though.
I want you to talk about your missions. Yeah.
Well, that was a mission where I got shot down for the second time. So I got the bridge, and then they got me.
Wasn't once enough?
No, I had to do it twice to make sure I knew what
okay.
I was doing.
Yeah. So how long were you in? You were in Thailand flying missions. Did you fly missions out of Vietnam too, or no?
No,
Everything out of Thailand.
I never flew a mission out of Vietnam. In fact, I never dropped a bomb in South Vietnam. So that's what we did. And all the guys who flew up into the north were flying out of Thailand, for the most part. I mean, they did come out
So
of...
you were bombing northern Vietnam.
Yeah, and Laos, of course.
Well,
We won't say anything about
we
that.
weren't there, right?
That's right, we weren't there.
Everybody knows it, but we weren't there. Yeah. So, what was it like when you first arrived there? Tell me, what was your first impression? Like, what the hell did I get into?
Well, my first impression was, well, I know some of these guys from going through training with them. My whole class went over. Whole class, 9 pilots in my training class. And I got assigned to a squadron, and it turns out they tried to grab the new guys. Well, we're all lieutenants. So, and no other training other than going through the school at Nellis Air Force Base. So we were relatively inexperienced.
On the job training.
Yeah, so we did on-the-job training. But the squadron was great, and the people were great. The commanders were really good. And again, I mean, I was just a first lieutenant, brand new first lieutenant. So I was kind of in awe of everything.
Oh, I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. What kind of armament does the 105 have? How many bombs could you... See, I was with the bombers, so I know they put a whole rack of stuff in there,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
But obviously you couldn't do that with a fighter.
No, we often we go out with 8 750s or 8 500-pound bombs. We could carry... how many did you carry? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 1,000-pound bombs. And we could carry... 2 2,000-pound bombs or 2 3,000-pound bombs.
3,000-pound bomb? I didn't know they had 3,000-pound bombs.
It's a blast weapon, and actually sometimes we opened up helicopter landing pads with them. We blast the trees out of the way.
You cleared the area for them,
Yeah,
huh?
we did clear the area.
Yeah.
And of course, then we had a 20-millimeter cannon on board with about 600 rounds, and we could carry air-to-air missiles, heat seekers,
Yeah.
and rocket pods. Napalm back then, before they outlawed it.
Yeah.
So that was always good.
Wow. You guys really had a lot of... I didn't realize you had all that stuff on you could carry all that.
It had a lot. It was interesting. If you had a really heavy load, though, we'd have trouble getting above 15,000 feet. So we'd end up refueling at 15,000 feet on the way in. And then we'd push it up and really get some speed going. And the one thing that airplane could do was go fast. I mean, really fast.
How fast do you think it went?
Well, I once saw 810 knots at about 100 feet. I was running scared, though, at that point.
I'd say I give you a lot of credit, man. You know, flying those birds is something else. Do you remember your very first mission? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, well, the first one was just a flight of 2, and we went after some caves in Laos. That's about that. It wasn't all that exciting, but it went good. And then they started adding.
You said, "Oh, this ain't bad. It's easy, right?"
It's not bad.
All of a sudden, now it's different, right?
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, after you had a couple of easy missions, then you'd start going north, up into North Vietnam. And those were pretty exciting sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I had you know this guy, Barney Barnhart, right? You knew Barney, didn't you? Mm-hmm. He had F4, and he was a reconnaissance. So he was like
Recce guy.
flying like this through the canals and stuff. You never did that, did you?
No.
Oh, you didn't want to either, right?
No.
Because his plane was unarmed. It was all, reconnaissance. But tell us about some of your missions. I know you got quite a story because you being shot down twice. That's...
Well, I can go over that mission if you like, or I can do it.
Well, you go over whatever you want, however you want to do it. I'm going to sit here and listen because I'm in awe.
Well, actually, it was my 8th mission, and we were a flight of 4 105s, and we were dropping bombs singly into a cave, trying to hit a cave in southern North Vietnam. And then all of a sudden I felt a big bang and looked down, and the firelight was on and the engine was dying, and I looked in the mirror and I could see flame way in the back, and of course then the guys in the flight are yelling, "You're on fire." And about 30 seconds after that happened, the airplane just kind of pitched over on me. So out I went.
You hit the ejection button? Or?
You had to raise handles on the seat and then squeeze the triggers. You'd raise the handles, the canopy would separate, and then when you squeeze the two triggers, the seat would go. And everything was automatic after that, hopefully. And so I got out at about 8,000 feet, and
Wow.
I looked down and watched my airplane crash. And I said, I think this is not a good spot because we just were dropping bombs on these dudes. And
You're not going to get a warm reception.
no, not at all. But then I noticed I was coming down into, it looked like a heavy treed area. And my only thought was, do I keep my legs together or do I cross my legs when I go into these trees? Because
What do they advise?
keep your legs together.
Yeah.
So I went through the trees, and it was actually a high canopy. And I got hung up about 10 feet in the air. I was hung up, and then I just broke free and hit the ground. And got out of my stuff. We always carried radios so I could talk to my flight. Told them I was on the ground, I was okay, and I was going to go hide. And so they all went off to the tanker. So I was by myself. And they said, call us back in an hour. So I think it was like 5 minutes later I called them again, and they said, that's only
Get me
5
outta
minutes.
here.
Well, I'm really scared at this point. They came back, and there's a bunch of other planes now. When somebody went down, the war almost came to a stop, and you'd have airplanes stacked up everywhere trying to get you. So after about 3.5 hours, about that long, I heard the A-1s coming in. A flight of 4 A-1s. Those were the rescue fighters. And when you hear those guys, you know the choppers aren't far behind them. And sure enough, they located me and brought the first chopper in. And by now, it was just about sunset. It was getting really dark. And so they couldn't see me on the ground. We did carry these little pen gun flare things to signal, and they say, send up a flare. And they said it looked like automatic weapons fire. They said like 5 flares came up out of the jungle. And so the helicopter came in, and he flew over me, but it was dark down on the ground now. And I just yelled at him, stop, on my radio. And I said, just drop the hoist. And they did. So it was the thing called a tree penetrator. The one thing you're not supposed to do is touch that thing before it touches the ground, so it can discharge the static electricity.
Yeah.
But I, of course, had to try to jump on it before it touched the ground, so it knocked me flat on my butt. But I finally got in it. They started hauling me up, and the helicopter had to leave a little early. He had some kind of a mechanical malfunction. So they dragged me through the treetops for about 1/4 mile. But it was okay. They could have dragged me all the way back to Thailand for all I cared.
Wow.
So that was that mission. And believe it or not, 2 days later, I was up flying again.
Yeah, you didn't get hurt at all? I'm sure you got sore.
I got cut up pretty good and beat up. I looked like I'd been in a fight with a baseball bat, and I didn't have the bat. So
So that's where you got a Purple Heart?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Because you have a two Purple Hearts, right? And you got a Silver Star.
yes,
And what other awards?
DFC.
Distinguished Flying Cross.
About 12 or 13 air medals, and there's a bunch of other awards throughout the years, but those are the wartime awards.
So how long were you flying these missions over there? Did you do one tour, 2 tours, or?
The first tour ended when I went down the second time. That was my 28th mission. And I think the reason was they just said, we can't afford you anymore. You keep losing airplanes. So they sent me home. And I went to Air Training Command in Enid, Oklahoma, where I'd gone through pilot training, and I instructed for a couple of years in the T-38. And then I got back in the 105.
What you wanted.
That's what I wanted, and went back for a second tour.
Yeah.
And I
Now,
did.
these are year-long tours, or 6 months, or what?
Well, it was 100 missions or a year,
Oh,
whichever
whatever came
occurred first. So 100 missions over the north, or
Wow.
a year, or if you get shot down twice, you can go home early.
Yeah. So tell us about well, you've had a lot of missions, obviously, but you said there was a second time you got shot down. What happened then? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was 35 days later, and we had a mission on a railroad line that was northeast of Hanoi. So we cruised on in with a flight of 4, and started pulling up to roll in on the target so we could drop our bombs. And they fired 3 missiles through the flight. So I was number 4. 3 of the guys went one way, and I went the other way and broke into the missiles. So when I
Why'd
came,
you do that?
well, you don't want to just sit there and let the missile hit you.
Oh, I see.
And
You saw them coming, so you were trying to avoid
You
them.
can outmaneuver them.
Oh, outmaneuver them.
And
Yeah, obviously you did.
well, no, the missile didn't hit me.
Oh, okay.
No. So then I came out, and I was all by myself, and it was real quiet. And so I rolled back in on the target again and dropped my bombs and took out one span of the bridge. I watched it come off, fall down into the water. And then I said, but there's nobody shooting out here. And we're going to head out to the ocean now. And I said, there's not much going on around here. And I called my flight. They were 20 miles gone already.
Yeah.
They said, we'll come back and get you. So they turned around. Well, then I figured out why there wasn't a lot of shooting going on, because there was a MiG-17 shooting at me. And so I did a maneuver which was almost like a split S or a snap roll, and got away from him. Meanwhile,
Snap rolls like that?
yeah, only it's called a high G roll underneath.
Oh, okay.
I'd never tried it before, but it takes you from pretty good speed to no speed about.
Really?
Yep. And so then I started heading out that way, and I'd cleaned all my fuel tanks off and everything. The airplane was clean now. And so the flight of 3 came this way, and I went that way. We never saw each other. So I'm heading for the water, and then we could just join up out there. Well, about, I don't know, maybe 30 miles after this bridge incident, I'm heading to the east, and here comes a MiG-21 in on me. So I start to turn, and I go, this isn't going to work out very well.
No.
Because the 105 did not turn very well. It was fast. So I lit the afterburner and went for the dirt, and I could outrun them. And that's when I saw 810 knots on the deck.
Wow.
So the only problem with being an afterburner is you start to run out of gas pretty quickly. So I said, well, I'm clear of that guy. I'll just come out of burn and climb up and join up with my flight. Well, I crossed the ridge, and all hell broke loose. And I watched part of my wing come off. And it was all ground fire.
You got hit over ground fire?
Yep. Got hit really good. And but I could see the water. So I set up a glide. I got up to about 9,000 feet. I'm gliding for the water, on fire, really on fire now. I had fire in the cockpit. I crossed the coastline, and I was about 600 feet when I crossed the coastline, and I ejected at about 300 feet. And that time, the canopy didn't come off, so I went through the canopy.
Oh,
Ejected
boy.
through the canopy. It had a big pointy tool on the top of the seat that would shatter the canopy on the way out.
Oh, okay.
So, but then I tumbled real violently and hit the water all tied up in my chute. So I went down like a stone.
Luckily it was water and not ground.
Yeah, but now I'm underwater.
Yeah. All tied up with it.
But I happened to have a knife on the side of my G suit, so I got it out, started sawing away, cut my arm a couple times. Finally got it to where I could deploy a water wing, and that dragged me up to the surface again.
Water wings?
Yeah, May West like. But
Oh, it's like you pull the thing in and
yeah, they inflate.
inflate.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And of course I had a life raft too. That was still attached to me. So I got up in the life raft and called the flight and told them I'm in the water. They thought I'd gone in with the airplane, as they saw the airplane crash.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, as usual, we're out of gas. We'll go get gas, and we'll get the rescue forces coming. And I thought I was in a pretty good place. There were some islands around me. What I didn't know was it was a major shipping channel, and all the islands had guns on them.
Oh.
Around me.
And they weren't friendly.
No, they were not. They were upset with me. So they finally got back to me, and the Navy was coming to get me. And that rescue force consisted of 2 A-1s and 1 helicopter. And they made 3 runs at trying to get in to get me, and they had to turn around and go back out because of gunfire.
Oh, wow.
So finally an A-1 came over the top of me, and it was very fortunate because there was a big 2-masted junk was coming towards me. They'd figured out I was in the water. And there was a guy, I could see a guy with a gun in the bow, and I told the guy, and he had dispatched the boat. The A-1 did. He fired a great big, some big rockets at it, and it blew up, and then all the other little boats went around and went back. So they're orbiting me, and finally the chopper came in and dropped the hoist, and I got in it, and they started winching me up, and then I fell out of the hoist, so I wasn't in the right way. But then I finally got back in it, and they started pulling me up. And about halfway up, it stopped pulling. They had a problem with the hoist, and it was time to go. So off we go.
And you're sitting in this old bucket.
I'm swinging underneath the helicopter. He's jinking around, and they had guns in the helicopter, and they were shooting at people on the beaches and that. And I'm swinging around underneath. And it was pretty wild. And
I would think so.
They finally figured out what was wrong and got me up in the helicopter. And then the only other problem they had then was I wanted to run around and kiss everybody and thank them. And they were still under fire for another 30 minutes.
Wow.
So to calm me down, they let me shoot the machine gun out the window for a little bit. And then they handed me an airline miniature whiskey and strapped me to the floor. And said, stay there. So then they were going to drop me off at a destroyer, but they got word not to do that, so we refueled off the destroyer. They hovered and they passed a hose up and they plugged it into the helicopter and refueled.
The ship refueled the helicopter?
Yeah.
In the air?
Yeah, we were out to the side of the boat, and they got them a fuel hose and plugged it in. It was the darndest thing. I thought I was going to die right there. I said, this is nuts. So they took me to the Constellation carrier, and now it's dark. And the guy came to get me because they don't let you wander around the flight deck. And the lights came up on the superstructure on the carrier, and they had a band playing the national anthem. I couldn't believe it.
Welcome home.
Yep. And then a guy comes out of the darkness and he says, welcome back, my name's Sharp. Well, he happened to be the head Navy guy. So he hung on to me for 3 days, dragged me from boat to show him what they found. And then I finally got back, and then they said, well, you're going home. That's it.
Yeah, we had enough of you, John.
Yep. So that was that adventure.
That had to be some kind of adventure, boy. I'll tell you. I can't imagine that, especially being in the helicopter there and swinging back and forth.
That was pretty.
Like an amusement park or something. But now people are shooting at you too. So,
but better than being in the water still.
Yeah. But you're here, and you know. But you got burned on that one, right?
Yep.
So that's where your other Purple Heart was. Wow. Well, there's a guy sitting over there, he's a friend of yours, Jack.
Yeah.
And he told me, he says, this guy got a story. So he's right. You got a story, man.
And I was just a lieutenant that I hadn't been in but about two years. Yeah.
But you did a lot of. How long was your career?
I did 30 years,
30 years.
1 month, 1 day.
Yeah. So you did the 2 deployments.
Yeah, I did another 69 and 70. I went back to Thailand and flew out of Takli, Thailand.
The F-105s?
F-105s. And I didn't get shot down that time.
Well, that's good.
That was good.
Because I'm sure you kind of got tired of that, you know.
Yeah, you would,
Yeah.
yeah. It wasn't what I planned on doing.
Yeah.
But I do if I run into like Army guys who wear parachute badges and that, I always say, how many combat jumps do you have? And they'll go, none. I go, well, I've got 2.
I'll tell you, I did a show with a group called Homeland. I tell the story every once in a while, and there was a Marine, big fella. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the singers of the group, and I was introducing him, the group, to the audience. And I said, this is Bob Peters. He was in the Air Force. He'll be introducing you. And he says, you were in the Air Force? I says, yeah. He got up and came over towards me, and I went like, uh-oh. Did they have a bad experience? And he says, I got to give you a hug. He says, when I was in Vietnam, he says, I called for help. We didn't get anything. No Navy, no Army, no helicopter. But out of the blue came an Air Force pilot that blew the hell out of everything, and that's why I'm alive today.
It's good.
You know, that was done it.
Yeah.
I said, good. I'm glad. Because I still want to stay alive, too. You know, but, wow. But those are some experiences. I mean, that's amazing. Those are amazing stories. But you did like 30 years. You went back again for another deployment. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of uneventful in a way, wasn't it? I mean, you didn't get shot down.
No, I did not.
But you did do a lot of damage to the enemy.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But what else? Yeah, after Vietnam, now Vietnam ended in 75, and you're still in. Mm-hmm. So where did John go?
Well, after the second tour, I went back. I went to Wichita, Kansas, to McConnell Air Force Base in a 105 squadron, and continued to fly the 105. Then in April of 72, I went to Williams Air Force Base to fly the F-5. And the squadron there was kind of unique because all we did was train foreign pilots. So I've trained Saudi Arabians and Jordanians, Taiwanese, Brazilians.
Really?
That's what we did. It was basically a gunnery school for these guys. And we had our own F-5s, our own ammo dump there, because we were on the Air Training Command base, and we were actually assigned to Luke Air Force Base across the town. So that was a pretty good deal, and I did that for about 2 years, and then word came out that they were modifying. They were going to build a 2-seat F-5F, and they needed a tactical pilot to go to Edwards Air Force Base to be the TAC pilot on the test program for that airplane. So I raised my hand, and I got the assignment. Because I graduated from college with an aeronautical engineering degree, so I think that helped.
Yeah, I'm sure it did, yeah.
So I went to Edwards for a 9-month tour, and I actually rode in the back seat on the first flight of that airplane with the Northrop test pilot. And so we got done with that test program, and I said, well, that's it. I'm out of here then. I'm going to leave Edwards because there's nothing much here. Actually, it was a neat place. And I get a call, and they said, you only thought you were moving.
You're not going
It
nowhere.
said, you're not leaving. You can be the tactical pilot on a thing called the Peace Hawk 4 program for the Saudi Arabians, which was a highly modified F-5E and F. Or you can be the test director. What would you like to do? I said, well, I'll be the test director.
Yeah.
So my 9-month tour ended up being about 3.5 years at Edwards. So, and after we finished that, the Saudis thought I was going to go to Saudi Arabia to help get everything going or set up, and I said, no, I'm going to England. I'm going in the F-4 to England. So I had to check out in the F-4, so I went across the desert from Edwards, and my checkout in the F-4, it was F-4E, was 6 flights. That was my whole checkout to be qualified.
What's an E? F4E. What is that? Is that the year of the make? Or what is the E?
It's a later model. They had the
later
B's,
model.
C's, D's, and E's, and to go to England. So I got 6 flights, and they said, "You're good to go." I'm going, "You got to be kidding me," because I'd never flown an airplane before. So we go to England. And I had to leave my wife behind, and her mother was living with us at the time, too, and my 2 poodles. I had to leave them behind till I could find a place for them to live in England.
Yeah.
So I go to England and check into the fighter squadron at Bentwaters at Woodbridge Air Base on the coast, and I've been there about a day, and I'm walking down the hallway. I'll never forget this. And there was a lot of lieutenants in the squadron. And they were back in this classified briefing area, and I hear them going, "Geez, can you believe this crap? We got this major here, and he's got 6 flights in the airplane. What the hell are they thinking?" So
that major be you.
So that would be me. So I walked in and said, "Hi, I'm that major, and I need some help."
So you had a great career.
Oh
my friend.
yeah. So I only flew the airplane for 9 months, and then we converted to the A-10. So I went back to the States for training. Oh, by then I had my wife over there, and I had her in a 400-year-old farmhouse next to a pig farm. So she wasn't happy with that, and
did you ever hear this saying, "Happy wife, happy life"?
Yep. Well, she asked me one day, she said, "Do you know how to get a mortgage in England?" I said, "No, I know there's a way." She said, "Well, start working on it because we're going to build a house." So then I went back to the States to get checked out in the A-10. And sure enough, I'd happened to run into a guy in a bar at a hotel I stayed at for 6 months. And I actually was tend bar there sometimes. And he heard me talking, and he said, "Mate, I can get you a loan for 1% of the loan amount." And this guy was an orderly in a mental hospital. How he knew the bankers, but I did. I got a home loan, and while I was gone, my wife had this house built.
Wow.
Yep.
So eventually you had to sell the house, right? You sold the house?
Yeah.
I mean, I have been to England, and I loved it, but yeah.
So there we were in England flying A-10s, which was a great airplane, and the squadron was great that I was in. I was the operations officer for the squadron. So I've been there about 2.5 years now, and I get a call and say, "You've been selected to go to a German air base and start an A-10 unit on a Luftwaffe base." I went, "How did that happen?" And I don't know. I do know how it happened. I was on an accident investigation board with our wing director of operations for an F-5 accident up in Denmark. And I was the investigating officer because I had more F-5 time than anybody in Europe. And so from that, then he kind of liked me. And so I went to a place called Norvenich Air Base, which is near Cologne, Germany. And I was there from day 0 to 2.5 years. And we kept 8 A-10s there all the time. I had about 100 people assigned, and everybody lived on the economy because there were no U.S. facilities there. And it was a really good assignment.
This time you're a colonel, right, Bert?
No, I'm still a major.
Still a major.
But I got promoted to lieutenant colonel while I was there. And so I was there 2.5 years, and then I get another phone call, and it says, "Congratulations, you're going to go be the chief of USAFE Stanaval at Ramstein." So,
where's that?
Ramstein, Germany.
Germany. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there we pack up again and go to Ramstein, and we lived in a nice little village, which is always important. And I was the chief of Stanaval, so I was gone like 6 months out of the year, going to the various bases, giving check rides and stuff like that. And I had a pilot, or a Wizzo, a backseater from every airplane they had in there. And I went all of Europe and as far as Egypt to give check rides to embassy guys.
Wow, what a career you had.
It was a really good assignment. There's some stories I could tell, but I won't go into it here. But
well, it's a family show now.
My unit was called Casper's Flying Circus when we show up. So we did party just a bit. We had a good time. I had some great people there. And then I was there for 2 years, and it's time for another assignment, and I ended up going to the Pentagon.
And you weren't flying there.
Now, I was not flying there. I ran the Air Force command post in the basement of the Pentagon, and I was not happy there. But I did get promoted to colonel while I was there.
Bird colonel.
Yep, much to everybody's surprise.
No, I'm not surprised.
Because nobody believed it. And so anyways,
I'm not surprised. You deserve it. Are you kidding me?
So anyways, one day I'm running an exercise down there, and there's a bunch of high-rolling generals wandering around. I get a tap on the shoulder, and it was my old director of operations from England. Well, now he's a 4-star. And he says, I hear you're not happy. I said, get me out of here, please. Well, he said, well, you know, that's a personnel thing, blah, blah, blah. A month later, I get a phone call. You have an assignment.
Where to this time?
Where to? I said, when do I leave? I didn't even ask them where to. I just said, when do I leave?
Yeah.
And they said, don't you want to know where you're going? I said, well, yeah, where am I going? They said, you're going to Korea. He said, but now you have to decide, do you want to fly the A-10 in Korea, or would you like to get checked out in the F-16? I said, how about that F-16 checkout?
Wow.
And when do I go for that?
Wow.
So I went there, and that was a 10-ride checkout, and I'd never been in the airplane before. And I went to the headquarters at Osan, but I flew out of a base called Kunsan down to the south. And I was the director of operations for the Air Forces in Korea. So it was a pretty good job. I had like 250 people working for me. And I got to fly a lot. And in fact, one time we were going down to the Philippines for an exercise, and I was in the F-16 we had 16 F-16s. And my wife was in the tanker going down. She was going down to the Philippines too, and she was riding in the tanker, so she got to watch me air refuel. I could see her up in the window there. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And before I got her on that airplane, I asked the lieutenants in the squadron that I flew with, because they really liked her. I said, would you mind if my wife came along to the Philippines? Because I know what goes on in the Philippines. And they said, oh, we'd be more than happy to see her. So, because they'd come up to Osan all the time to party.
Yeah.
And then they'd come by my house. And my wife would take care of them.
Wow.
So,
what a career.
So I did that for a couple of years, and then I had an assignment to Norway, to be like the F-16 guy in Norway. And I called the personnel people. I said, I talked to the guy there, and I don't think this is a very good assignment. And I said, is there anything we can do? And they said, are we glad you called? We have a short notice assignment to Kadena Air Base. The vice commander of the air division has to go back to the States. He said, would you be interested? I said, they said, that's where you're going.
Okinawa.
So I go in, and my famous call is, guess what? And the answer is, we're moving. So I went to Kadena.
Your wife's got to be a doll, I'll tell you.
She's a great girl. She is really, really good. So off we go to Kadena, and I was supposed to fly F-16s with an aggressor squadron there, but they canceled the squadron. So my boss calls me into his office and says, I bet you're disappointed. I go, yeah, I am. He said, here's your orders. Go to Luke Air Force Base. By the way, you're leaving tomorrow. Go to Luke Air Force Base, get checked out in the F-15, and get back here. So I went through a 10-ride checkout in the F-15 and got to fly F-15s at Kadena and be the air division vice. It was a great. My wife loved Okinawa, just loved it.
Wow.
So after about 2 years there, I get this call from PACAF headquarters, the Pacific headquarters, and they said, "Congratulations, you've been selected to start a training squadron on a Singapore air base." So I said, "What do you mean I got selected?" He said, "Well, the Sink was there the other day and you drove him to some meeting and he said he interviewed you and selected you." Well, so I go home, guess what?
Yes,
We're
sir.
moving. We're going to Singapore now.
How many years you guys been married?
55.
Wow. That lady's got to be something.
She is. She put up with a lot.
Yeah. We're moving.
Yeah. Well, when we moved here to the villages where we're living now, it was our 29th move. So,
But you're not in the service anymore, so you know you're going to be there for a while.
yeah. Well, no, I'm in the service at Singapore. I'm on a Singapore air base. My houses are up on the old British Naval Base, and we've renovated almost 200 houses for the people that were coming in, and 4 apartment buildings. And I had 5 berths for U.S. Navy ships. My office was there, and I had 5 berths. My main office was not on the air base we were at. And then on the air base, of course, I got a hangar, and we'd bring airplanes in to train with the Singaporeans or with the Indonesians or the Malaysians. And it could be Marine, Navy, Air Force. Back one time I had a group from, where the heck were they from? I'll think of it in a minute. But it was very, very interesting. And if we bring F-15s in, then I'd get to fly the F-15 again. So that went on for about 2.5 years, and I had an all-ranks club built. And I had a TV to everybody's house. We had a big dish TV. I renovated a church and had it open on Christmas morning. It was pretty cool. It was brought in a U.S.
Did you ever
Navy.
think about writing a book?
See, people have asked me that.
Yeah.
I brought in a U.S. Navy supply operation out of the Philippines, and got housing for them and took care of them. And they had a 1-star admiral. I was on the ambassador's country team. I was they called the Think Pack rep to Singapore. Normally, it's a guy in the embassy, and to Malaysia, and to Brunei.
You got around, man.
And so that was very interesting, very, very interesting. And then so after about 2.5 years, I had 1 year left before I had to retire. 30 years. And they asked me if I'd stay, and I said, I don't want to stay. I said, I've had enough of the Singaporeans, and I know they've had enough of me. And we got everything done here.
Mission accomplished.
So they said, we'll take good care of you. So they sent me to Denver, Colorado, Lowry Air Force Base, to be the base closure officer. So I closed an Air Force base, along with everything. So that's where the 1 month and 1 day came in, because we had to wait for the day the base closed for me to retire. And the final flag detail at Lowry Air Force Base was 6 bird colonels. That's all that was left. 6 bird colonels. We actually lowered the flag, gave a flag to the mayor of Denver and the mayor of Aurora, and we all turned around, saluted smartly, and retired on the spot, all 6 of us.
Wow. You keep in contact with anybody?
I was for a while. Frankly, some of them have died off, and
Yeah, time goes on.
yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, you aren't done flying.
Nope.
We're going to be running out of time real soon, but that covered we covered your Air Force time because you retired now, but you didn't stop flying, did you?
no, I did not.
No.
I'd lucked out in Singapore running into some United Parcel Service high rollers, and they said, send us your resume when you retire. So I did, and it wasn't about 2 weeks later after I sent the letter off, I get a call saying, you have an interview with United Parcel Service. So I went and interviewed and got hired by UPS in '95, and I flew DC-8s and 747s for them. And meanwhile, we moved again twice, near Louisville and then further out from Louisville. And we were there for 20 years. And I retired in '09 from United Parcel Service. Got a guy over there.
Yeah, we got a guy, you can't see him, but he's over there. We talked about him before, Jack. And that's how, you guys didn't know each other when you were in the service, right?
No.
But you were flying
Yep.
for United Parcel, and so was he.
Yep.
And did you met him in the villages?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the funniest thing of all.
Yeah.
But I knew of him. But I mean, it was good stuff.
I bet people knew you
good
too.
Stuff. It was good stuff about him.
Yeah,
But-
no, he's a good man. He does a lot with the Band of Brothers.
Yep.
And that's a great group. So.
Yep. And so,
You're also, like I say, with the Distinguished Flying Cross with my friend Joe Finch.
Yep.
And a great bunch of guys there. So, but I think we've pretty much covered it all. You know, I'm sure you got some more stories you could tell, but I got another group out there that I'm going to be interviewing, and they're probably wondering what's going on. But yeah, we got to get together once in a while. Now,
I'm all for
I want
that.
to show you some photos I have of a Russian plane. You know, it landed after Genovo, and they landed in Hartford, and I have pictures of it.
oh wow.
And I want to show it to you, but I don't have it today. So, but I know where to find you in the
Oh, yeah.
villages.
I'm easy to find.
Yeah. All right.
Great.
But, well, time to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
You're a hot. You're
Okay.
We look at that camera right there. Ready?
Yep.
To all our veterans out there, active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. That was fun.
I'll tell you, this experience. Today I'm at AMVETS Post 2006, a major sponsor of Central Florida Salute. And I want to introduce to you the commander here, Ronnie Mack. Ronnie, tell us a little bit about AMVETS 2006. Where are you located? And
We are at 500 North Canal Street, Leesburg, Florida. It's right off of 441, between 441 and Main Street on Canal. Can't miss us. And we're a veterans organization, along with, we have an auxiliary, and we have sons of veterans that are related some form or another to a veteran. And we do a lot for a lot of charitable donations and stuff to charities in the area and in the county. And we're a major sponsor to Central Florida Salute. We're proud of it. We're glad to be. You guys do a heck of a job, and we'll sponsor you as long as I'm here. We're going to sponsor you. So.
well, I'll tell you what, we do. Sue and I really appreciate it. We're a two-person operation.
Yep.
And what we try to do with education and supporting our veterans community, and you supporting us is major thing. It's major.
We're glad to do it, Bob. We're glad to do it.
And you have sons here, you have auxiliary here. You've got a website too if somebody wants to join.
Yep. It's don't punch into www. It's amvets-2006.org, and it'll take you right to our website, Facebook page, and all that's there, and you'll be able to find that. The webmaster, he tries to get the calendar on there every month, anything pertinent. There's a lot of other links on there for veterans to find out where to get help for certain claims and stuff like that. Our webmaster's really into that stuff. That's the guy you ought to be interviewing right there. So,
well, you know what,
he's got
Ronnie?
a lot of stuff.
You have a lot of clout. You tell him to talk to me, and we'll get him on the show. Okay?
I can do that.
All right. But I just want to, on behalf of Sue and myself, we want to thank AMVETS 2006 because you guys are the major players behind us, and we appreciate it.
But we just wish we could do more. We really do.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are awesome.